Hello, Internet. It is I, the Malik Aaron, and welcome back to Box Office Predictions. Today, we are going to be talking about Spencer. So, as usual, we're going to be going over the pros and cons. So, let's get to it. Pros. Well, might as well start with our leading lady here, Kristen Stewart. Now, most of you probably know who Kristen Stewart is. I mean, her main claim to fame was her role as Bella Swan in the Twilight Saga, for better or worse. Definitely worse. Although I always remember her for a role as Zuthura, a extremely underrated movie that you all should watch right now, any way possible. Please watch it. It's really good. It deserved better. But yeah, her main claim to fame was Twilight. And man, that's really bad because her role as Bella Swan in Twilight, she is like, no offense to Kristen Stewart, but her character was one of the worst female protagonists in cinema history. I mean, think about it. Her character, all she did was awkwardly do some mouth breathing, stare at people, be mostly useless, just let everything happen to her, not taking control of her life, getting into these terrible situations where she's basically has to deal with either a 100 plus year old vampire or a werewolf instead of picking. I think in the first movie she had like this friend that was like real nice and she just ignored him for Edward. I'm just like, why would you just pick the friend? You would have avoided all this drama. But nah, she wanted to pick a 100-year-old vampire because that's not creepy at all. the whole the whole thing was a train wreck, but it was a train wreck that made hundreds of millions of dollars. Actually, all the movies combined, they made billions. So you can't say they weren't successful, but man, those movies are just gonna a permanent stain on will be a permanent stain on anyone's record. And she also did Snow White and the Huntsman around the same time, which was a hit, although she didn't do the sequel or spin-off. I forgot what it was. The Huntsman, which did just bombed entirely, and nobody remembers that movie. Well, I watched it, and I can't even tell you what happens. But granted, that was like 5 years ago, but still. So yeah, so there was that. Then after that, she went like super indie. Like she wasn't like in big movies anymore. She was trying to build up some cred, build up some clout, trying to wash away the stink that was Twilight, which I don't blame her for at all. I mean, I know Robert Pattinson's doing the exact same thing, and he's been doing a pretty good job at it. But then recently she came back with Charlie's Angels and Underwater, and well, less said about those movies the better. She did Happiest Season, which went to Hulu, and I heard was pretty good. And now she has this, which her role as Princess Diana, and this is being built as her Oscar movie. Like, if this people are like this has to get her an Oscar nom, an Oscar nomination, and I think it might do it because sure, she may not be a draw in a lot of her movies, but I think this one's a little different because it's more, I guess, a bit more of a departure than usual for Kristen Stewart. And this might be a movie where people look at her and just like, wow, she's pretty damn good. Right? So I think that might work to this movie's favor, seeing Kristen Stewart transform into Princess Diana. So I would consider that a pro, relatively speaking. Although we will get to the cons, and I will mention her two movies, or I said less said about them, the better. We'll talk about them later. But yeah, I think Kristen Stewart, this being her Oscar movie, might help it, and it might get this movie some buzz. So I would consider that a pro. Okay, second pro, This is definitely an Oscar movie. There's no debate about that. This is Oscar bait chapter 1, the biopic, because this movie is mainly about Princess Diana, who Kristen Stewart's portraying. According to synopsis, since December 1991, the Prince and Princess of Wales' marriage has long since grown cold. Through rumors of affairs and a divorce abound, pieces ordained for the Christmas festivities at Sangrium's estate. There's eating and drinking, shooting and hunting. Diana knows the game. This year, things will be a whole lot different. So this is definitely, yeah, it's a biopic. And if you want to get some Oscars, you got to make a movie about some famous person, right? That's just how it works. I mean, if you, well, other types of Oscar bait movies, well, really, to be an Oscar bait movie, you need to, you know, it has to be based on a true person. It has to have relevant themes. It needs to be artsy. And what else? I guess we can throw politics in there too. Might as well, right? And this definitely falls into the biopic territory. Although I've heard people kind of call this movie a bit artsy too, so you throw that in there. But, it's not a bad thing to be like an Oscar bait movie. There have been plenty of Oscar bait movies in the past that have made a lot of money. Some of them didn't even win anything, and they still made money, right? And you know, Oscar season is going to be a lot. It's going to be super crowded, I bet, because there's plenty of movies coming out that'll definitely steal this movie's thunder. But for right now, this might be the strongest bet, except maybe Dune and French Dispatch. But yeah, this I think has a good chance of being a movie where people get interested in it. It won't be a huge hit, but enough people will be interested in it. So yeah, I think its status as an Oscar movie will help it. It'll draw more eyeballs. So I would consider that a relative pro. That being an Oscar bait movie, but an Oscar bait movie for the better, not for the worse. So that's pro number two. Uh, Pro number three. I mean, when it comes to competition, at least in the near future, it's not too severe. But well, at least not this week. This weekend, it's not, because again, all the October movies are gonna just fade away after this. But after Spencer comes out, like for the next few weeks, we're just gonna have Oscar bait movie after Oscar bait movie after Oscar bait movie. It's gonna be a flood of Oscar bait movies. But for right now, Spencer, for this one weekend, it doesn't have to deal with anything. So I would consider that a pro. Lack of competition for now. Another pro, reviews are very good. They're like in the 80s, like 84%, which is more than acceptable. So easy pro right there. Cons. Kristen Stewart, I already mentioned, known for the Twilight movies and Snow White and the Huntsman. But recently, she had two big bombs on her resume: Charlie's Angels and Underwater. Now, I've covered both of these, actually. And in those movies, not in those movies, in those review, those videos, I mentioned how she wasn't like a legitimate draw, and the box office confirms that. But granted, these movies were kind of screwed from the get go. I mean, Charlie's Angels 2019, who asked for that? Who wanted that? And that movie really shot itself in the foot when Elizabeth Banks went out and said, "Oh, men were the problem. Men caused this movie to fail, not because the movie looked bad or just looked like a non-event. It was the male gender caused this movie to tank." See, that definitely didn't help. Then Underwater, that movie was screwed for a long time because it was a Disney Fox movie. So it was doomed to fail, pretty much. So I think those two were just bad situations. But this one is more reliant on her. But still, those two movies were just stains on her resume. So it doesn't help. It really doesn't help. So I would consider that, a con. The fact that Kristen Stewart's track record is not great overall if you ignore the Twilight movies and Snow White and the Huntsman. So, yeah, her track record's not great, so that's a con. Another con is that I don't know, there's a lack of ads for this movie. I mean, it's not opening wide. It's only opened like less than 1,000 theaters, so I can't like I'm not surprised there's not like a huge marketing push. Not to mention this movie's going to get overshadowed by the Eternals very easily because Eternals is an MCU movie, so it's going to be the talk of the town. So, yeah, I'm not surprised Spencer isn't getting all that attention in comparison. But yeah, that definitely doesn't help, being in the same weekend as the Eternals. I feel like it's going to have the same effect that when Many Saints of Newark came out the same weekend as Venom 2. Everyone talked about Venom 2. Nobody talked about or watched Many Saints of Newark. I feel like the same thing might happen here, but again, who knows? Who knows? But still, it's not a good idea to go up against a big superhero movie. It doesn't work out the greatest. So I would consider that a con. Another con, apparently audience reviews, at least early ones I've seen, are not great. Many people have called some of the people I've read their reviews. They called the movie boring, like a bore, a snooze fest. So I don't think that's gonna help it with like mainstream audiences. Maybe like for art house people, it works for them, but for like the average moviegoer, not so much. So that might really be a detriment to the movie. So I would give that a con. I would consider that a con. And last con, oh man, the Oscar bait after this is gonna be nuts. I mean, let's just look at the schedule real quick, just so I can emphasize this. Next week we got Belfast, then King Richard, and then House of Gucci, then West Side Story. Oh, then there's Nightmare Alley and Licorice Pizza. Then there's A Journal for Jordan. And this is all like within like the next month. The next month. Not to mention I think Tragedy of Macbeth counts too. So like the competition is not gonna let up after this. Like, well, I don't think all these movies are gonna succeed. It'll at least with each new movie is gonna take away more and more of you know the attention away from Spencer. Because that's how Oscar bait works. Like all these movies try to get all the attention, and by doing so, they all cost each other potential money. So, yeah, the competition for this movie, at least direct competition, will hurt it. Even if it has good reviews, it'll hurt. So, yeah, not to mention movies that are already out, like French Dispatch and Dune. So, yeah, it's not looking too great in that department. So, but anyway, opening weekend. Oof. I don't know, man. It's in less than 1,000 theaters. Let me check the official amount. 996, so like less than 1,000 by four. I'm going to say it's gonna open around $2 million, $3 million, somewhere in the range of 2 to 3 million. I think that's reasonable. I don't think that's too much to ask for. So I'm gonna go with that. And then Total, I don't know. It depends on how far it goes, how far it expands. It's hard to say if it will do that. So this is more of a contemporary prediction here. I'm gonna go with 10 million total. And yeah, that's it. So yeah, that was Spencer, and that was the weekend. Just two movies, which is a blessing in comparison to the nightmare that was last week, where I had to do five in a row. That was awful. So I'm glad things have slowed down to where it's not a complete pain. Okay, so next week it's going to be a little weird because Cliff of the Big Red Dog, that's on a Wednesday, so I have to do that in the middle of the week. Then Friday I have to do Belfast. Next week, Ghostbusters after the week after that. Ghostbusters Afterlife and King Richard, and then midweek after that, Enchanto, House of Gucci, and Resident Evil Welcome to Raccoon City. Those are the main ones that I know for a fact are coming out. I don't know about these other two though. That's hard to say. But Enchanto, House of Gucci, and Resident Evil, I know those are coming out. Those are guarantees. And then that'll be November, which definitely is a huge step down from October, which is weird to say because historically it should be the opposite. But we're in weird times. So anything goes. So yeah, anywho, yeah, that's it. That's all. Make sure to subscribe, like this video, leave a comment, turn notifications, share the whole drill. Want to check out more videos like this? I got a playlist on the homepage with all previous prediction videos I made this year. I don't even know what to compare this movie to. I guess other Oscar ish movies like Dune, French Dispatch, Last Duel, which nobody watched. So if you want to watch, oh, May Saints of Newark, I guess would count. So if you want to watch my prediction videos on those, go right ahead. There's also the canceled series where I go over all the movies that were supposed to come out but didn't. I've now made 87 episodes up to this point. The most recent one I did revolved around Paw Patrol movie 2. So if you want to watch that or any other ones I made, you can go right ahead. There's also box office recaps where I go over the box office results for any particular month. October recap will come out over the weekend. Had to be delayed a bit, but it'll be very soon. But if you want to watch any of the past recap videos I've done, you can go right ahead. And yeah, that's it. That's all. I am out. Goodbye.